Hi, I'm Kim from Sew A Lot, and this is March 2024, and we are on month number 3 of the Kona Cotton Solids blocks of the month. This is our beautiful block we are just about to make. So let's get started. So to start with, we want to look at the different fabrics and their colors that are in this block this month and how we cut them. So fabric A is really purple. It's called heliotrope. This is A. And with heliotrope, you're going to cut 2, 4, and 7/8 inch squares and then cut them once diagonally so you end up with 4 triangles. Fabric B, you're going to cut 2 and 7/8 inch squares and then cut them once diagonally so you end up with 4 triangles. So A and B. C is corsage, and corsage you're going to cut 2 and 7/8 inch squares. Cut 2 squares and cut them once diagonally so you end up with 4 triangles. Fabric D is gumdrop, and again you're going to cut 2 and 7/8 inch squares, cut them once diagonally so you end up with 4 triangles. E is dragon fruit, and again you'll cut 2 and 7/8 inch squares and cut it once diagonally and you'll end up with 4 triangles. Okay, and that was dragon fruit. F is geranium, and with F you're going to cut 4 2 and 7/8 inch squares, 4 of them, cut them once diagonally, and then you'll have 8 triangles. So that was F. G is dark violet, and dark violet you're going to cut 4.5 inch squares. You'll cut 4 of them 4.5 inches. And again, this is dark violet, and you will not cut these squares diagonally. They're full just like this. And then our last color here is ballerina. It's kind of a pink purple. It's a big square. You're going to cut 1 8.5 inch square, and it stays just like this. Okay. Last thing we cut from is the white, and the white you start by cutting 4 and 7/8 inch squares, cut them once diagonally, and then you end up with 12 triangles. Next I cut 4 2 and 7/8 inch squares, cut them once diagonally, and get the triangles out of that. So you have 8 triangles out of that. And then the fabric that is left, you trim down into 4 2.5 inch squares. So there's a bit of cutting, bit of triangles on this one. So let's start with this. Okay, in step number 1, we're going to start by taking our A fabric, the heliotrope purple triangles, the 4 of them, and then we're going to take 4 of our large eye triangles, which are the white, 4 of these, and what we're going to do is just place these right sides together, and then we'll sew along the long edge with our 1/4 inch seam and then trim this up. Okay, so I just finished sewing our A and I large triangles together. I'm going to use the blade saver to trim it apart. Okay, and I'm going to press this towards the purple when I press these. Okay, so we end up with 4 white and purple half square triangles. The next thing to do is these should measure 4.5 inches. So I'm going to square them up, make sure they're 4.5 inches, which they're pretty darn close. Not much squaring up to do here, just a little bit. For purple and white half square triangles. Okay. Step number 2. We're going to take fabrics D, E. D is gumdrop. There's the gumdrop. D, E. E is dragon fruit. And D, E, and I triangles, which would be white. Okay, so we're going to make 4 half square triangles out of each of these 2 colors. Simply like we just did, except these are smaller. Put right sides together, and we're going to sew along the long edge. So it's time to sew again. Okay, so I got all half square triangles sewed together. I'll use the blade saver again and take them all apart. And then these are going to be pressed towards the pink side. Okay, so now that I've got these all pressed, I'm going to trim them down to 2.5-inch half square triangles. Okay, for the next part of this block, we're going to create the center square, which is a square and a square technique. I think this is my favorite block so far because it's got the 2 colors in the corner and it's really easy to do. So the first thing, what we're going to use for this is your H fabric. You're going to cut an 8.5-inch square. You should have that. The G fabric are 4.5-inch squares, and then 2.5-inch squares of the white. So 4 of these, 4 of these, and 1 of these. Now, the first thing that we need to do is we're going to draw diagonal lines on all of the squares. So I'm lining up my diagonal line on the edge of my square to draw from corner to corner. Okay, and then I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing on the white squares. They need diagonal lines also. Now that I've got the diagonal lines drawn, what we're going to be doing is the purple squares are going to go first, and we're going to do them on opposite corners. So I will start with one in this corner, and I will stitch on the diagonal line across there, and then the same thing on the opposite corner. I'm just going to stitch across that diagonal line, and then we'll come back and press it. Okay, so it's time to sew. So I've sewn the first 2 squares on the diagonals there. The next step is to trim off outside of that stitch line, and then what you're going to do is press it towards the purple, towards the darker color. So that'll go out, and then we'll turn it, and our next 2 purples are going to go on the opposite corners. And again, you're going to sew on the diagonal, and it's time to sew again. Okay, so I've got those final 2 corners sewed on, and so what I'm going to do is cut the corners off here, okay, and then press it outward towards the purple. Okay, so now we're ready to go to the white squares. The white squares are going to go in the corners, and we'll sew across the diagonal. These are small enough and far enough apart that they won't overlap, so you can sew all 4 of these on at one time and then take care of cutting them and pressing them. And each of the lines follows the line of the previous triangle. It's parallel, and that's what's going to make our stripe in our square on the corners. Pretty cool. Okay, so I've got the white square sewed onto the corners at the same diagonal across. Now I can go back and cut those and then press them. And these, when I press these, I'm going to press it towards the dark, so it will get pressed towards the purple. And I'll show you that again here after I press it. Okay, so I press this, and I'll show you the back side, and you can see where the light purple is pressed towards the dark purple, and the white is also pressed towards the dark purple. Then this is ready to go in the middle of our big block. And it should measure, I'm pretty sure it should measure 8.5 inches. So you can check it, square it up, Make sure that you're at the right size. Doesn't look too bad. Turned into this really cool looking block. I'm going to set that aside. And for the next part, we're going to make triangles for our block. We're going to use the C fabric or corsage, 4 triangles of that, and the F triangles geranium. We're going to use those. And we only need 4 of those, so I'm going to take 4 of those away. And we're going to use 4 of the large white triangles, 4 of the small E and I half square triangles. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to take the half square triangle and it's going to go in the lower left hand corner, and then a C triangle is going to be sewed to the top of that, and then an F triangle will go on the right side of that, and our white triangle will complete this into a square and go opposite of that. Okay, we're going to make 4 of these blocks, so it looks like it's time to sew. Now, this one, what we're going to do is we're going to press it, and it's going to press towards the triangle. So we have 4 of these. Our next step is to take the F triangles, and the F triangles are going to go right here, and so we will sew them on next. Okay, so we got these all sewed together. I'm going to break these apart, and I'm starting to get a lot of threads hanging off of these pieces, so I'm going to try to clean it up a little bit. I've got a couple of dog ears I can snip off. Seemed like a good time to clean it up. Okay, now this time, this triangle is going to be pressed outward towards the triangle too. Try to have a nice right angle there. We've got our 4 triangles. Now it's time to add the white piece. The white piece will go right across the center. I'm going to line up my corner, and look at that. It lines up very nicely. So now I'll just sew a 1/4 inch seam across the long angle and do that 4 times, and then we can move on. So we've sewed on our white triangle. Now we have this nice square, so I'm going to press it towards the white, and they should measure 4.5 inches, and it looks pretty good. Very good. Okay, so I'm going to just touch up a couple spots. Okay, on step number 6, we're going to take the B triangles, 4 of those, and the F triangles, the other 4 of those, the geranium, and 4 of the I triangles that are left, and the small squares that are left. All right, and what we're going to do first, how this works is it will go this direction this time, so the pink of the half square triangle is down in the lower right hand corner. The B triangle will go on top of it. That will get sewed on first, and then the F triangle will go on the lower left hand side, and then the I triangle will complete the square. Okay, and when we press these, we're going to press towards the triangles every time. So we're going to make 4 of these, and it's time to sew. Okay, got the first triangle sewed on. I'm going to take these, and now we're going to press this towards the purple triangle. And it was important to stop to press in between before you go on to the next part. Triangles look like this. We're going to take the F triangle, place it on top, and sew along this side here. So it's time to sew again, and we're going to press this outward towards the triangle, and we'll have that nice triangle there. Press these. There's our pretty triangles. So now we're going to take the white ones, put the white ones opposite, and sew along the long side. Okay, so I thought of a couple things to mention about these half square triangles with the fancy corners. One is when you stitch along that long edge, you do have these dog ears here. Of course, these look more like rabbit ears or cat ears. You can cut those off. It's just take some weight out of your quilt. The other thing is too, when you open them up to press them, this is the point you want to see if you got it. That white point right there. So that's what we're looking for, is to make sure we want to have that on there. That one's a little tight, but I'll take it. And that one looks pretty good. And I didn't even look at these. There's that one. This one's a little far, but I'm gonna leave it. That one's pretty good. And got that one too. So it's time to press these. I'm going to go towards the white triangle with the pressing. Well, I'm going to go ahead and cut these dog ears off of the corners with my scissors. And then I will check with my 4.5-inch ruler and make sure that they're square at 4.5. I had pretty good luck last time, so I'm going to hope for that again. Not supposed to hope, are we? It's skill. So let's check this. This one looks pretty darn good. I am not going to do a thing to this one. That one looks good. There's a bit here. I'm just going to trim up a little bit there because it's a corner. Okay, we're making good progress. That completes step number 6. All we have left, 7, 8, 9. We're in the home stretch. So now we can lay the block out. First, our center block. After the center block, how about the corners? Purple goes to the outside corners. Okay, and then E and D. If you remember, E is the bright pink and D is the light purple. And it looks like the bright pink is going to go here, here. So I'm going by this bright pink triangle here and here. So on all sides, it's the left side of the corner square. Okay, and the rest of it, fill in the blank. So this one goes across. So I'm just lining up our pink and purple triangles, corner triangles. And there is what our block looks like. So now what I'm going to do first is sew these side pieces together and then sew them to the center. And then I'll complete my row across the top and my row across the bottom. So I'm going to take a minute to sew and I'll be right back. So I've sewed the 2 side pieces together more times than I wanted to, but got it finally. Got my points matched up, and then I pressed this seam open. I figured it might help going over these points where they overlap to thin out the seam a little bit so it doesn't get real thick. Okay, so I'm going to sew these onto the side of the center block, and then my center row will be complete. So I just sewed the sides onto the center block, and I pressed those seams open to get this part where these points connect right here to get those to lay flatter. So next I'm going to sew my top row and my bottom row and sew them onto the center section. So I sewed together my top row. When I did this, I pressed these outer seams out towards the white, and in the center I pressed it open again to make this seam less bulky, and I sewed the bottom row also open in the middle, and I pressed the outside seams towards the outside. So just 2 more seams and our block will be complete. Hold on. Okay, so I've just finished sewing on the top row so we can see what it looks like. A little off right there, but not bad. This one's lined up okay. These points lined up okay. Center, I'm happy with that. This one looks pretty good. Good. So not too bad going across there. Points look pretty good. So now just got to sew on the bottom. So I am having to line up the center points, and I'm pinning right here and here, making sure that I'm going to get those matched up. We'll sew in just a minute. Okay, So we finished the block, sewed on the top and the bottom, and actually I think I had it this way. What I did was I pressed my seam towards the center on the top and the bottom just because it seemed to want to go that way. So this block finish should measure 16.5 inches. From this edge, looks like I might be over a little bit on that side. So I can get my big ruler at home and measure this, and it looks like it's pretty close. So we got that finished. Okay, so there you have it. Block number 3 for March 2024, Kona block of the month. Look forward to seeing you and doing next month's block. Bye.